And we're live now.
Ah, let me do that. Hi, Josh. Welcome back.
Cheers, mate. Good to be back.
How was it? How's it run?
Um, Amazing, epic. A lot of pain. Very uncomfortable the entire time. Even getting back to camp, I wasn't always so enthusiastic about crossing the finish line because it was so uncomfortable at camp. The tent was like a sauna. There were dust and sandstorms. But that's what I went for. I went to suffer. I went to be out my comfort zone. That's why I took an extremely heavy backpack with camera gear, and way more food than probably 99% of the participants, and more clothes than I needed. So I was really weighed down. But I went there I was in full acceptance of all the pain, even though a lot of it could have been avoided. Um, I went out there to suffer, and it was suffering, but it was also glorious. The scenery was absolutely just breathtaking, out of this world. So you'd be running along, and then you'd just be like, wow, I just need to stop and kind of bask in awe of what is to my left right now. Yeah, it was incredible.
What kind of stuff did you see?
Um, Sand dunes, lots of acacia trees, and like hills, what they call jebels. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, but yeah, like rolling hills on the horizon, on either side, and yeah, nice sunrises, sunsets, and not much life, to be honest. A few camels here and there dotted around. Lots of carcasses, camel carcasses, goat carcasses. And other than that, scarab beetles, dung beetles.
No human carcasses. I'm glad you made it back, mate. Well done.
Mhm. Yeah. So it was a struggle, but it was totally worth it. Really amazing. And I felt really connected. So I mentioned in the text on the fundraising page that I wanted to connect with my ancestors who were Jewish and who suffered for many years, wandering, lost in the desert. And I didn't quite feel connected in that way, but I definitely felt connected with like legionnaires of the ancient world, like in soldiers from the armies of like Alexander the Great, and from the Roman Empire, who marched battle and covered endless miles to reach the destinations and then go to war. And some of them, they covered like 30 plus miles a day, carrying heavy armor through deserts, into the unknown. And yeah, I felt like almost like I was on a similar kind of mission. But of course, it wasn't really life-threatening in the same way. Um,
So tell me about the mission that you were on. Why did you do it? I mean, I get the pain side of it, but what else was in your mind when you decided to run? How far was it?
252 kilometers,
In how many days?
6 days.
Across the Sahara. So what was in your mind when you decided to do that?
Well, it came up on the radar about 2 years ago. There was a BBC presenter, Sophie Rayworth, who did it. And I thought it was like just for elite, like Dave Goggins, people like that, who seem to know no pain. Um, and then I saw that she did it, the BBC presenter, and we got approximately the same marathon PB. So I was like, okay, maybe it is within my potential to do something like that. And I couldn't stop thinking about it for many, many months. So about 6 months ago, I signed up. And I was kind of filled with excitement and dread at the same time. And it would kind of flip between one or the other for many, many weeks. Because I heard horror stories about people like passing out from the heat stroke. Several people have died. 3 years ago, 2 people died. It was over 50 degrees every day. And on top of that, there were like bouts of food poisoning and diarrhea because no one washes for like 9 days straight, and there's no running water, no showers. You got to bring all your food with you, so it's really unsterile. The conditions are really unhygienic. And there was the fear of, maybe I'll drop out from food poisoning or like a mammoth-sized blister, because it's notorious for really shredding your feet. There's a lot of soft sand, and when you plant your foot in the soft sand, it impacts and then you slide again. So that's where the blisters come. And I was pretty lucky. I got only a few small ones, but other people had to get like a third or more of the skin on their feet removed. And then they still had another 100K to go. So I'm glad I wasn't in that position, and all credit to the people that finished with those humongous blisters.
How many people ran and how many dropped out?
It wasn't so clear, because at the end of every day they announced how many people dropped out. And then at the very end of the whole thing, they announced how many people in total dropped out, and it was way less than the cumulative amount, which was a bit weird. So there was some clerical error at some point. But I do know that 70 people dropped out of the long stage. And so there were 851 people at the start. And I think about 120 in total dropped out.
Maybe the long stage played havoc with your brain and you can do any maths.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, at the long stage, it took me 20 hours. We started at 6 a.m. It was the third day, third stage, and it's the one everyone dreaded. And I was running well into the night, and then I started hallucinating. Like the last 2-3 hours, I was hallucinating, and it was like a huge flat lake bed we were running on at the end in the dark. And I could see like hills and massive sand dunes in front of me, and I was like running around them. And then I got to like the side of them, and I pointed the spotlight, the headlamp, and it was flat. And I was like, okay, a moment ago there was a huge hill in front of me, but I found it quite amusing. And then I was kind of like, what am I going to see next? Yeah, because once you're in this kind of state, you kind of go into a survival state, and you're really deprived of sleep and energy. Funny things start to happen. So yeah, it freaks some people out, but I was totally up for having like a weird experience in the desert.
Speaking of weird experiences and ordeals, I know you're running for ICEERs as well as Rain. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how ayahuasca fits into this journey.
Sure. So I feel like long distance running, ultramarathons, and ayahuasca, they've been quite complementary for me. So as you know, I've been attending ayahuasca ceremonies for about 7 or 8 years now. I've helped organize many, and it's really sacred work, sacred healing work for me, and it's helped me on so many different levels. mind, body, spirit, purpose, meaning, connecting with others, reaching full potential. And something that I felt was a bit lacking from retreats, and also like the psychedelic experience in general, is some sort of disciplinary modality to help with integration. So you might have a really profound psychedelic experience, say an ayahuasca retreat, and you're filled with so many insights and wisdom that seems to be far beyond your capacity. It seems to come from beyond just our mind and body. And there's always the problem, the issue of how can we possibly integrate that into our everyday life. And I felt that discipline is essential. And running 5-6 days a week has really helped me with discipline, and not to fall back into old habits and negative rumination and the constant kind of thoughts that don't serve us in a positive way. So I feel like running regularly and just physical exercise in general really helps me to kind of just quell that negative rumination and really enforce what I've learned from, for example, ayahuasca retreats.
Very interesting. Yeah, my own, the time I spent in the Amazon, which was about a year, involved an ordeal on my side as well. And basically I got ill. I was ill for about 8 months. And for 5 of those months, I had a parasite in my body. So I had an open wound, and I had a flesh-eating guest on my chest. And yeah, so I was drinking every morning for about 5 of those months, getting up really early, drinking at 4:30 in the morning, and then either meditating or going for a walk in the jungle. And there was all kinds of austerities, completely different to yours, and a whole lot more humid, it seems. But yeah, I was in the jungle, and certain diets, and I was celibate for a long time. I was praying a lot, and when I got to the end of that and I was fully healed, I kind of looked back over that time when I was interacting with the trees and the plants in a very direct way. Like, for example, I was cutting barks from a whole range of trees in order to treat this wound. And when I was cutting them, I was singing to the trees as well. And leaving the preparation of the medicine was very, very ceremonial. And when that was through, I really owed the jungle a debt, because I'd been cured of a potentially disfiguring illness, a very serious illness, leishmaniasis, and that was the reason I ended up founding Rain in order to try to repay some of the debt that I had to the rainforest out there. So it took a little while, but straight afterwards, towards the end of that ordeal, I was nursed back to health by a woman, and she became pregnant very quickly. And when I went to go and visit her family to introduce myself, they took me to a stream. And then some years later, when we went to go and show off the children, because we had twins, to the family, the stream they'd taken to me to had dried up. And that's when we started working with Rain, or founded Rain really, to reforest the areas that were feeding into this spring, and to start to work with the hydrology, and it expanded out and became a network and a mission to work with reforestation and marginalized groups and all the rest. I'm interested in how people put their psychedelic insights into the world. So I've heard from you that you've done this crazy run, 252 kilometers across the Sahara. And tell me about why you chose ICEERS and why you chose Rain to support in doing that.
I met Ben, who is the co-founder of ICEERS, Ben Delonen, about 8 years ago at a conference in Italy. And he presented his documentary that he made about Iboga and Iboga use in Gabon. And then he also presented the ICEERS, which is the International Center for Ethnobotanical Education, Research and Services, which he co-founded to help indigenous who use plants as medicines and help them with legal support and also educate wider audience about their plant medicine practices. And I interviewed him, and we had quite a good rapport. And then next thing I know, a few months later, he invited me to be the photographer at the United Nations Indigenous Rights Week. And I met several other ICEERS members, and I was just really touched by the work that they do. I found it very important that these indigenous tribespeople have that kind of support, especially on the legal front, because many shamans are persecuted for using what are in many countries illicit substances, although in their traditional use they've been using them for hundreds of thousands of years. Medicines such as ayahuasca and San Pedro cactus, yet when they're caught with them, say crossing a border or an airport, they can face jail time. So as far as I'm aware, at the present moment, over 140 people have had legal support from ICEERS and have been helped to not serve jail time through that. So they're doing very important work, and that's with the Ayahuasca Defense Fund, which ICEERS set up. And I was also invited to be photographer at the World Ayahuasca Conference, which was organized by ICEERS. So I've collaborated with them over the years, and I did a fundraiser last year with a 100-kilometer ultramarathon, which really pales in comparison to the one I just did. But they're an organization that I really feel strongly about, and I'd be honored to continue working to support them in any way. And Rain came on the radar a few years ago when we were talking, and I was in touch with several different reforestation charities and organizations, and there was something about Rain that really resonated more strongly with me. And I guess it was because of the collaborations with indigenous peoples and traditional communities, whereas many of the other reforestation projects, they're using cutting edge technology, blockchain, AI, which is great, but it didn't spark the same kind of interest like within me. I didn't really feel it so strongly in my heart. And it kept I mean, it took me a couple of years before I really reconnected with you properly and said, right, let's do it. But you kept coming to my mind, and I was like, okay, I'm not even going to think about this. If something keeps coming up like that, I have to do it. And the same thing happened with this Marathon des Sables. It kept coming up, and I was like, I can't ignore that. I have to do it. So that's how everything aligned, and it felt good to really support you guys.
Interesting. Yeah, it's good to follow those. It's good to follow those threads, really. I think that when things keep on popping into your head, I mean, they can either be obsessions or they can be kind of maybe communications or something that's definitely worth looking back at again. I think one of the things that I see as Rain has in common is that we're working across both sides of the story, really. So we're very much interested in supporting reforestation work, food security, community autonomy, and it's all community-led, and that's a side of it. And then the other side of that is, how do we change the way that people in former colonial countries think about places like Brazil, for example, and this idea of charity, we're doing charity by giving money to these people who would otherwise be in so much trouble. I thought that wasn't a very helpful way of looking at the world. If there are communities that know how to recreate topsoil, know how to be locally self-sufficient, then that's knowledge that might be useful to us here in the UK, and perhaps where you are in Switzerland. And I think of that as a knowledge exchange, an exchange of resources, an exchange of wisdom, and also just on another level, an exchange of love, really. Like, it's important for us to care about what's going on in other places, and we only really care if we hear stories, if there's communication going on there, So there's something that's really at the heart of Rain, which is about communication. And I feel that when something keeps on popping into our heads, whether it's, I know I need to go run 252 kilometers across a barren expanse of sand, or I need to get on and launch this organization, then it's really something worth paying attention to. When you were running, you mentioned the let's say the kind of the vision that you were having. What else was going on in your mind when you were running?
Well, an ultramarathon in a way is it has many kind of parallels with psychedelic or the ayahuasca experience, in that you go really deep and it can be very painful and you face things that you don't want to face, but it's also like a massive reset. So you like, as the miles go on and you clock up more and more miles, you're in like so much pain, your body's screaming to stop, and it can feel like every bone in your foot is broken with each step that you take. But it's pretty much all up here. And you need to kind of strip away all the layers of thought and get down to like a deeper, some sort of deeper core of resilience to plow through. And I find the same often happens in an ayahuasca ceremony. It can be really overwhelming. It can be like, for me, not for everyone, some people there, it's like rainbows and unicorns on it. I don't know how. It's definitely not for me. It can be like hellish torture, and I need to let go of all attachment. And the same happens with when you hit the pain barrier in like a really long distance run. You need to let go of all attachment and be fully present with your breathing and just the things that are keeping you alive and going forward. That is all that matters. Nothing else matters. And it kind of strips away all the BS, all the conditioning, all the erroneous thought. And it kind of distills your true essence in a way. And after one of these huge runs, I feel like I'm detoxified, and for several days after, I just feel incredible and reborn. And the same happens after a really deep cleansing ayahuasca retreat. And it also really sheds light on the illusionary nature of the mind, which I think, so ayahuasca is very good at deconditioning people from like the Western mindset, which, let's face it, is poisoning our planet and destroying the natural environments at an alarming rate. And ultramarathons do the same. They decondition us from all the things that are holding us back from reaching the goal. So combined, over the last few years, they've been quite a good tool, and with ayahuasca, really sacred, incredibly healing medicine for all manner of positive benefits.
You know, there's something really interesting you said there, this thing about it feeling like every bone in the feet are broken, but it's all up here.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I look at the news about environmental destruction or the latest thing that's happening, whether that's a mining disaster or whether that's the rate of deforestation, wherever it may be, it feels like everything is broken. And I remember that it's all up here. You know, we have the technologies, we have the people, we have the resources to turn this thing around at any point, you know. And it just takes us making the effort, you know, focusing ourselves, getting together and putting our efforts where they're really needed. You know, the earth, like the bones of your feet, they can fix themselves, you know. Your blisters, the skin on your blisters can grow back. But what's really needed is a change in mindset. How do we relate to our feet? How do we relate to each other? How do we relate to the natural world? And, you know, that story as well of just on your run, doing the next thing to keep your body alive, that is also the story of the last time. That's the story of the Israelites in the wilderness as well. You know, they know that there's a promised land in the future somewhere, and they know that they're escaping their conditioning that they're leaving behind in the metaphor of the slavery in Egypt, and they don't know where they're going, but they're following this pillar of smoke, pillar of fire, and it tells them what the next steps are in the whole story. And they, you know, it's like break camp, let's go. Where do we find water? You find it over there. What do we do about these enemies that we're facing? You know, all these kind of questions that come up, and it's the immediate questions, the survival, which they're dealing with. They've got a set time to be going across the desert. It's 40 years. How long was yours again?
6 days.
6 days. But at the end of that 6 days, at the end of that 4 years, there is a promised land that they're working their way towards. So I think that's a real story of taking the next steps. You know, what is it I need to do now to get through, you know?
I actually, I was kind of maybe expecting to have like a mystical experience out in the desert. A bit cliched maybe, but I got to a point on the 4th stage where it was so unbearably hot. And I was on the sand dunes and I couldn't run anymore. I was walking, trying to walk fast, but I was worried about overheating. And then the elites, like the front runners, they started an hour and a half behind us, I think, on that day. So they overtook me on the sand dunes and they were running like so fast, like on a track, and going uphill on the dunes didn't seem to faze them at all. And every step I took, I'd kind of fall back down. So I was like, okay, the next dune, I'm going to run, attack it. And I ran up it and I was at the top and I almost passed out. Like I had to rest on my sticks and I had like a moment. It was a moment. And I was like, this is the moment I've been looking for. My brain felt like it was cooked. It was so hot. It was 49 degrees. And then I kind of saw a really bright light. And then I just felt bliss and I just felt so happy and I was crying. Tears came to my eyes and all I could think of was just holding my son's hands. So I craved no creature comforts the entire time. I thought I would. Like other people were talking about, I can't wait to have McDonald's, I can't wait to have cold beer. I didn't crave for anything, not even a shower, nothing the entire time. But at that point, I was like, I'm feeling like my son's hands in mine now, and I'm crying, and I'm so blessed. I don't need anything more in life, you know.
It sounds like you've got your priorities. Sounds like you got your priorities straight, man. I mean, speaking of like the, I guess the next generation or what's going forward, what are your plans now?
So I would love to continue to support you in some way, Rain. I'd like to reach out to maybe other members and just have a chin wag. And also, I am very keen to help with the Institute of Ecotechnics, who are trying to rebuild the Heraclitus ship, and it's almost finished. If you don't know about the history of that, it was a research vessel which has done a lot of conservation work around the world, and it got damaged beyond repair several years ago, and they've been rebuilding it in Spain. It's in the dry dock at the moment, and it's at the very last stage. They just need a chunk of money to complete the painting, and then it's going to go off on its second maiden voyage to do conservation work, I believe, around Colombia. So that's going to be one of my main focuses now, to help them get the ship seaworthy again. It's amazing the work that they've done in the books that Synergetic Press, which is the kind of publishing arm, books that they've published. And I'd also like to support them and continue to support ICES in any way I can. I'm now a free man because I quit my job about 6 weeks back. So I have more time to do charitable work.
Amazing. Yeah, the good ship Heraclitus was one of the projects of Johnny Dolphin and his crew, that kind of hippies with real powerful dreams and real drive as well. I know they're involved in the, initially a biodynamic farm, or a permaculture farm, I believe. And that went really well. They decided, let's make a seafaring boat ship. And they did. And that sailed around the world for some years. And then they decided, let's make Biosphere 2. And they did. And created this environment where people could live for 2 whole years separated off, creating their own oxygen and food. Yeah, a real vision that came out of a psychedelic moment as well. I think it's kind of it's important to just understand like how powerful psychedelic insights can be when we bring them into the world and we start to we get things aligned and we get disciplined and we leave behind some of our attachments and say, okay, what's the big vision here? You know, That seems to be a unifying theme with what we're talking about here.
Yeah. What I love about those guys, and it's so refreshing, they have like a goal, and they're gonna make it happen no matter what, and they don't really talk about the business model and profits and stuff like that. So when I talk with other startups, they've got really comprehensive business models and talking about profit margins and how soon into the future they're going to start making profit. Synergetic Press and Institute of Ecotechnics, they're like, no, we're going to build this, we're going to publish this no matter what. And the money comes like way down the pecking order. So the dream, the goal, is like, we need to put this out into the world. The world needs this. So that I found them very, very inspirational, and I would love to support them.
Yeah, no, I think you're really onto something there. It's the vision which drags us through, you know, and if we hold that vision and then work around it, work with it, then things just come into alignment. And yeah, like the money turns up at the right time, the people turn up at the right time, you know. And then I think we're back to that story of the Israelites crossing the desert. You know, I think they may have had more than just heat to help them out. There's a whole story of what they were burning inside the tabernacle as they were crossing. But that's a whole other story. Josh, it's been amazing to talk to you. Is there anything you want to leave us on?
Yes, I would say the fundraising page is still open for, I'd say, the next 2 weeks. And then we're going to close it. So it would be great if we can reach the target. Need a little bit more cash to reach the target. And I just want to thank you and everyone at Rain for all your efforts. And likewise, ICES. And let me know how I can continue to help.
Brilliant. Last time I looked at it, I think it was 33,000 that you had hit. Where is it?
33,400 approximately.
That's amazing. That's really, really cool. If anybody else wants to do something, it doesn't need to be 252 kilometers across the Sahara. If you want to do something and link it up to Rain, then we can definitely work with you. Thanks again. Congratulations. Rest up. I believe you're preparing for the next run, yeah?
Another month, another ultra. It seems like. Yeah, I'm just doing another one in 4 weeks to kind of bring closure to the same one that I did last year, which I shouldn't have done because I was quite sick at the time. I had really low iron anemia and I could barely walk upstairs, but I got an infusion 2 days before and it got me to the start line. And I don't know how I managed to finish, but I passed out at the end and I couldn't move for 2 hours. And that was interesting. But I crossed the line, which is the main thing. Yeah, I don't know why I do it to myself, but yeah, it's all in good fun and humor.
Yeah. Good luck with it, man. Good to talk.
Cheers, mate. Take care. Thanks again.
All right.
Bye-bye.